Welcome to App on Board Studio Training. In this tutorial, we will build an advanced project. This project will feature advanced counter logic as well as multiple gesture elements and transitions on a single scene. As you can see in this playthrough, the user has multiple options to choose from while interacting with this project. Before watching this video, you should have a basic understanding of the functionality of App on Board Studio. Please refer to the beginner and intermediate videos prior to watching this tutorial. Let's get started. As you can see, our assets are already loaded into the tool. The first thing we're going to do is change our first scene name to splash screen. Next, on the bottom left, let's search for the splash screen asset using the type ahead and drag and drop the asset to our canvas view. Next, add a transition by hitting the plus sign next to transition on the top left. By default, after video is already selected, and move to scene is selected to new scene. So now, once I add a scene, the new scene will automatically be filled into this spot. Let's click add a scene on the top right. Let's title this scene EDM Home. As you can see, the transition on the splash screen has been updated with the scene we just created. Now let's drag and drop the EDM Home asset to our canvas view. Click the play video action on the top left and check that this video is looping. Next, we will create a gesture area to allow the user to select the songs that are available. Drag and drop a gesture area from the Elements tab on the bottom left. Resize so that it covers the first song. It's important to retitle each gesture as you create them. In this case, we'll title this gesture Category Song 1. Let's set up the properties of this gesture by clicking the Add Gesture to Area dropdown, select Tap, and next, let's add a transition that will happen as a result of this gesture. Click Add a Transition, then click the To Scene dropdown, and you can either select a scene that's already been created, or in this case, let's type in New Scene. Next, let's create the scene that's associated with this gesture. Click back to the Scenes tab and select Add New Scene. Let's title this scene Play EDM Track 1 Return, which is the same name of the song highlighted by the gesture we previously created. Next, let's add the assets associated with this scene. In this case, we'll need a video asset as well as an audio asset. Next, let's add a transition from this scene, so after the song is played, the user will be returned to the home scene. Click the plus sign next to Transitions. Click the drop-down next to Move to Scene and select EDM Home. As you can see in this asset, there's also an option to click back in case the user decides to go back to the home screen before the song and video is played. Let's create a special element so the user can return to the home screen prior to the video and song ending. On the Elements tab on the bottom left, drag and drop our Go to Scene button to the canvas view. Resize it so that it covers the back button. The Go to Scene button element is very similar to a gesture area, however it only has one function. It's a tap gesture and can only send a user to a specific scene, as compared to a gesture area element, which can be customized to your desired result. Let's title this element Go to EDM Home, select the Go to Scene dropdown and select EDM Home. Once this Go to Scene element has been created, and using the Layers tab, you can reveal it on any scene you create going forward. Next, we'll have to create an action so that the sound will stop upon exit of this scene. Click the Add an Action dropdown and select Stop Sound Effect. Click the Sound Effect dropdown and select EDM Track 1.mp3. Then toggle the On Exit button for this action. Let's repeat this step for the video. Click the Add an Action dropdown and select Stop Video. Now let's quickly confirm that all of our actions are correct. Our video will play on enter, our sound will play on enter, the sound will stop on exit, and the video will stop on exit. Finally, we created a transition that says, if the user completes a song, they will be transitioned from this track to EDM Home. Next, let's return to our EDM Home scene and create a gesture area for each of the remaining tracks. You can do so by repeating the steps from the previous scene, or there's another way by using our Layers tab. On the top left, click the Layers tab. Toggle the checkbox to show all. This reveals all of the elements created for this project. Deselecting Show All will only show you the elements used for this specific scene. Instead of repeating the steps to create a new gesture area over the second track, let's duplicate the gesture area from song 1. Click the duplicate button. Let's first hit the eye icon to reveal the gesture in the scene. As you can see, the gesture area has become darker because now there are 2 gestures on one area. Next, let's rename this gesture area Category Song 2. Select the gesture area on the top left, and let's relocate the gesture area to cover our second track. Next, let's change the destination of this gesture so the user won't be sent back to track 1. Click the To Scene drop-down and type New Scene. Now let's create our track 2 scene. Similar to how we duplicated our gesture area from our home scene, we can also duplicate a scene in the same way. Select Play EDM Track 1 on the right and click the duplicate icon. First, let's rename this scene. Let's title it Play EDM Track 2 Sparkle. Next, let's replace the assets in the duplicated scene with the correct assets. On the Assets tab on the bottom left, drag and drop the video file for track 2 as well as the audio file for track 2. Please note the video asset will overwrite the asset that was already in the scene, whereas the audio asset will be added. Let's review the actions in the scene to make sure that the correct audio and video assets are being played on enter and upon exit. Let's delete the action to play track 1 by hitting the trash icon. And next, let's adjust the stop video action so that track 2 MP4 is stopped upon exit. Notice the transition can remain the same simply because once the user ends the song, they will be sent back to EDM Home. Now let's quickly repeat those 2 steps to create a gesture element for the third available track and to create a scene for the third available track. Now that we've created our first category with 3 scenes attached, let's review our path view. As you can see, each of these scenes will be played and then returned to the home scene. Notice the user will never reach the end of the project, so let's create an end scene. Click Add Scene on the top right. Let's title this End Scene. On the bottom left, let's drag and drop the asset associated with our end scene. As you can see, this asset has animation, so let's make sure the video is looping. Next, let's set up the CTA button for this end scene. On the bottom left, click the Elements tab. Drag and drop the Share button to the canvas view and resize accordingly. Next, drag and drop the App Store button and resize accordingly. Notice if you hover over App Store ID, you'll see a pop-up to show you where to find it. Same goes for the Google Play Bundle ID. Next, drag and drop the Replay button and resize accordingly. The Replay button is very similar to the Go to Scene button. However, the Replay button has extra tracking on the back end to record how many times the user replays the project. Click the Go to Scene dropdown and select EDM Home. Now let's define this as the end scene. Click the Scenes tab on the top right, click the End Scene, then click the Properties tab on the top right, and click the checkbox End Scene. Let's quickly review our path view again. As you can see, we now have an end card, but unfortunately this end card is not yet connected to our project. Let's first set a condition that says a user must select a certain number of values, or in this case, play a certain number of songs before being sent to the end card. We can achieve this by creating a counter. The first thing we must do is set the counter and select how many values are needed to fulfill our condition and reach the end card. Highlight the splash screen first, and on the top left, click the Add an Action dropdown and use the type ahead to search for Set Counter. On the right, click the Counter dropdown and select New Counter. Let's title this Songs Played. The value should remain at 0, since this is the first scene in our project and shouldn't be counted. Now let's add a value to each of our track scenes. On the right, select the Play EDM Track 1 scene. On the top left, click the Add an Action dropdown and use the type ahead to search Add Value to Counter. Click the Counter dropdown and select Songs Played Counter. Then change the value to 1. This means that every time a user reaches this scene, the value will increase by 1. Now let's repeat those steps for scenes track 2 and 3. Now let's review our path view. As you can see, our project is still not connected to our end scene. On the bottom of our path view, notice that each one of our track scenes transition back to our home scene. So let's create a special transition from the home scene to the end card. Click the plus sign next to Transitions. On the right, unselect the After Video button. The reason for this is because once the condition is met, we want an immediate transition to the end scene. Click the Move to Scene dropdown and select End Scene. Next, hit the C button so we can create our counter conditionals. Select the plus sign next to counter conditionals. The counter should be set to songs played. The conditional should be set to counter equal to, and let's set the value to 5. This means that if a user reaches 5 values, or in this case, reaches the track scenes 5 times, then the user will be transitioned to the end card. Let's quickly review our path view. As you can see, our end card is now connected, and the user will be sent to the end card once our counter conditions are met. Just in case the user wants to replay the experience, let's create a set counter for our end card that will change the counter back to 0 should they replay. Select the end scene on the right, click back into our canvas view, and on the top left, click the Add an Action dropdown, select Set Counter. Click the Counter dropdown and select the Songs Played counter. Now let's continue working on our project. Click on EDM Home. Let's create a gesture element for our View All. On the Elements tab on the bottom left, drag and drop a gesture area to our canvas view. Resize to cover the View All. Let's title this element EDM to View All. Click the Add Gesture to Area dropdown and select Tap. Add a transition from Scene EDM Home to New Scene. Let's create a new scene. Click the Scenes tab on the top right, click Add a Scene. Let's title this EDM to View All. On the bottom left, use the type ahead to locate the video asset and drag and drop it to our canvas view. This is a transition scene, so hit plus transitions. The menu is already set to new scene, so now let's create the next scene. Click Add a Scene on the top right. Let's title it View All from EDM. Drag and drop the View All to EDM asset to the canvas view. This asset shows all the available tracks for our project. Let's first add a back button. On the Elements tab on the bottom left, drag and drop a gesture area and cover the back button. And let's title it View All to EDM Back. Click the Add a Gesture drop-down, click Tap. Let's add a transition and select New Scene. This scene is very similar to the last scene we created, however, the video asset will show a transition from View All back to EDM. Click the Scenes tab, add a scene, and let's title it View All to EDM. On the bottom left, let's locate and drag and drop the video asset for this scene. This is a transition scene, so let's add a transition from View All to EDM Home. So now we have scenes that will take us from the EDM Home to View All, and should the user hit the back button, we have a scene that will take us from View All back to the EDM scene. Next, we must add an element for each of our available tracks. You can do this multiple ways by simply adding a gesture area to each track, or we can use what's called a Go to Scene button to simplify it. Drag and drop a Go to Scene button to our canvas view. Let's resize and cover the first EDM song, Return. Let's name this Go to Scene button View All EDM Track 1 Return. Click the Go to Scene drop-down and select Play EDM Track 1. We now have to repeat the steps for each song. Let's use our Layers shortcut to simplify the process. Click the duplicate icon on the left, and let's duplicate for each track scene. Now let's rename it to View All EDM Track 2 Sparkle. Click the eye icon to make this element present on this scene. Now let's drag the element on the canvas view to cover the Track 2 Sparkle. On the right, click the Go to Scene drop-down and select Play EDM Track 2 Sparkle. Let's repeat this step for the next track scene. Now we're going to create our next category. We're going to do so quickly by using our duplicate shortcut. Let's select EDM Home Screen. Click the duplicate icon. Let's rename it Chill Home. The first thing we need to do is add the correct asset to this scene. Instead of dragging and dropping your asset from the bottom left, you can also click the action on the top left. Click the Play Video action, then click the Video drop-down and use the type ahead to select chillhome.mp4. This automatically adds and overwrites the asset to our scene. Now let's update our gestures from the copied scene. Click the gesture that covers the first track sticky. Next, click Add a Transition, and for the To scene, select New Scene. Now let's create the scene for that track. We can easily do this by duplicating the track from a previous scene. Let's duplicate the Play EDM Track 1 scene. First, let's change the name to Play Chill Track 1 Sticky. Next, let's update the properties for this track. Click the Events and Action tab on the top left. Under Play Video, click the Video drop-down and select Chill Track 1. Next, click Sound Effect. Click the Sound Effect drop-down and select Chill Track 1 MP3. Then click Stop Sound Effect and click the Sound Effect drop-down and select Chill Track 1. Then under Stop Video, let's also change the video to Chill Track 1. Let's also change the transition for this scene. Click the Move to Scene transition and change the Move to Scene to Chill Home. Let's double check that all of our actions are in order. Let's make sure our Chill Track 1 is played when the scene enters and stopped when the scene ends. Now let's update our back button for this scene. Highlight the back button. On the Layers tab, let's deselect it by clicking the eye icon. This particular back button is set up for the EDM Home scene, So let's duplicate and create one for the chill scene. Let's click on the duplicate and first rename it Go to Chill Home. Click the Go to Scene drop-down and select Chill Home. Next, click the eye icon on the top left to make this element visible. Now let's return to our Chill Home scene to work on our next track scene. Click on the Hold You Back track, click the To Scene drop-down and select New Scene. Click back on the Scenes tab, and let's duplicate the previous track that we just created. Let's rename it Play Chill Track 2 Hold. Let's repeat the steps to change our properties for this scene so the correct assets are playing. Let's repeat this step for the last track. Next, let's update the View All button on our Chill Home scene. Let's add a transition from Chill Home to New Scene. Let's retitle this category to View All. Let's return to the Scenes tab and add a scene. Let's title it Chill to View All. Drag and drop the asset for this scene. Add a transition. Click the Move to Scene drop-down and select New Scene. Let's go back to the Scenes tab and let's duplicate our View All to EDM scene. Let's rename this scene to View All from Chill. First, let's edit our back button. Let's rename it View All to Category Back. Next, let's add a transition from View All Chill to Chill Home. Now let's add Go to Scene buttons for the tracks we just created. Drag and drop a Go to Scene button to the canvas view. Resize it to cover this sticky track. Let's name this button View All Chill Track 1 Sticky. Click the Go to Scene drop-down and select Play Chill Track 1. You can repeat this step for the remaining two tracks, or you can duplicate from the Layers view. Make sure to rename each element. Once the elements are created, let's make sure they're visible on each scene using the Layers tab. Let's start with View All from EDM. Notice here that they're not quite visible. Let's click on the eye icon on each element to make sure they're visible. Now let's update our back button. Click Add a Transition on the bottom right. Let's select New Scene. Now click the Scenes tab, click Add a Scene, and let's call it View All to Chill. Drag and drop the asset for View All to Chill to the canvas view. Select Add a Transition to Chill Home. Now let's create our rock category. Let's duplicate our Chill Home scene and let's title it Rock Home. First, let's change the assets for this scene. Click the Play Video on the left and use the type ahead to locate the Rock Home asset. Let's go ahead and create our first song for rock. On the right, let's add a transition from Rock Home to New Scene. Let's make the new scene by duplicating the first song from our Chill category, and let's name this Play Rock Track 1. Let's update the video and audio assets for Rock Track 1. Click the Play Video action, click the drop down and locate the track for Rock Track 1. Let's also update the audio track for Rock Track 1. And lastly, let's add a transition from this scene to Rock Home. Now let's repeat these steps for the remaining two tracks. One thing we will have to update is the back button. Select the back button and then click the Layers tab. Let's duplicate it first and click the eye icon to take this one off the scene. Let's rename the copy Go to Rock Home. And let's change the Go to Scene to Rock Home. Let's return to our Play Rock Track 1 and toggle on the correct back button. Now let's create our final track. Let's highlight the last element, add a transition from Rock Home to New Scene. Click the Scenes tab and let's duplicate a scene. Let's rename it Play Rock Track 3 Hot. Now let's update the assets for this scene. Next, click the Scenes tab and highlight Rock Home. Let's update our View All button. Let's add a transition from Rock Home to a new scene. Now let's add a new scene. Let's title it Rock to View All. Locate the assets for this scene. Drag and drop them to the canvas view. Now let's add a transition from Rock to View All to New Scene. Click the Scenes tab, and let's duplicate the View All from Chill scene. Let's title it View All from Rock. Once again, all of our View All scenes are present. Now let's duplicate our Go to Scene button for the remaining tracks. On the left, select it, click the eye to make it visible. Let's rename it View All Rock Track 1 Don't. Under the Go to Scene button, select Play Rock Track 1. Now let's select it and move it down. Let's repeat that step for the next two track scenes. With that, our menu is complete. Let's go ahead and toggle the Layers view to make sure that all of our buttons are present. Let's update our back button. Highlight the back button. On the right, let's add a transition from View All from Rock to New Scene. Click the Scenes tab and let's add a new scene. Let's title it View All to Rock. Let's locate the asset on the bottom left and drag and drop it to our canvas view. Let's also add a transition from View All to Rock Home. Now let's return to the other two View All scenes to make sure all of the buttons that we created are present. Click the eye icon to toggle on the buttons. You can use the search feature on the Scenes tab to narrow down just the View All scenes. Now let's return to the other two View All scenes to make sure all of the buttons that we created are present. You can use the search feature on the Assets tab to narrow down just the View All assets. Now let's create our scenes that transition from home scene to home scene. Click the Add a Scene button and create a scene from EDM to Chill. Drag and drop the element for this scene. Now let's add a transition to Chill Home. Repeat these steps to create scenes for EDM to Chill, Chill to Rock, and Chill to EDM. Use the search feature to find the home scenes. Let's start with EDM Home. Next, let's add our gesture elements on the home scenes. On the bottom left, drag and drop a gesture element to the canvas view. Resize the gesture element so it covers the entire scene. This will give the user the ability to swipe back and forth on the entire screen. Let's rename the gesture Swipe Navigation. Click the Add a Gesture drop-down and select Swipe Left. Add a transition from EDM Home to Chill. One thing to keep in mind regarding the layers that are more prominent will be located on the bottom of the list. Therefore, if you add, in this case, a swipe element across the entire screen, it will overpower the previous buttons that we added. To correct this, we will move this button up, so the other buttons will be on top of this layer. So as you read down the list, the elements are stacking as you add. Therefore, whatever you add last will be the most prominent. Now that we've moved our swipe gesture to the back of the list, the taps that are above the swipe gesture will prevent the user from being able to swipe. To overcome this, we can add an additional swipe gesture to each one of our element buttons. Let's click a gesture and click Add Gesture to Area, and let's add a swipe left. On the bottom, we can update the transition so the swipe left will move to the home scene. Now that we've created all the gestures in this category, we're going to go to the next category. Click the Scenes tab on the top right. Use the search ahead to find Chill Home. Let's select our swipe navigation. If you notice here, the three little bars in the middle, the Chill category is right in between EDM and Rock. So this scene is going to have a swipe left and a swipe right present in the scene. or specifically within the same gesture. We already have the swipe left transition here, so let's add another. Click Add Transition. We'll create a transition from chill home to chill to rock. Next, let's add our right swipe gesture. Click Add Gesture to Area. Select Swipe Right, and next, let's add a transition. Our swipe right will be chill to EDM. Now, let's repeat those steps on the remaining buttons. And finally, let's work on our last home scene, Rock Home. And let's repeat the steps to update each of the last 4 gesture areas so the user has the ability to swipe left to transition to the chill home scene. First, reveal the swipe navigation button by clicking the eye icon on the top left. And next, let's repeat the steps to add the swipe left gesture to each one of our buttons, which will transition the user from rock home to rock to chill. Let's review the path view one final time to make sure all of our scenes are connected. And this concludes the advanced build in App on Board Studio.